There are some songs that don't tell a story, they create an entire world. This is one of those songs. This is Tantalized by the Church. I'm Lucinda, and welcome to The Outsider Within, a space for honest conversations about the experience of being different. And today we're exploring Tantalized by Sydney band The Church. I'm not sure when I first discovered them. I feel like I've always known of the church throughout my sort of teenage years plus. I remember the first time that I actually saw them live, and that was my very first over 18s gig, and they were supported by the Crystal Set. It was really exciting. It was so much fun to actually see live music. It was incredible, and clearly it's something I really liked because it's something I've continued to do. Something I really liked about the church was they weren't all decked out in fluorescent colours. They were paisley, they had daggy mullet type hair, and really big earrings. They were doing their thing, and I respected that. Reflecting back over all the music I've listened to over the decades, I honestly couldn't name another band or artist that sounds like they do. However, if you know of one, I would love to hear from you. Pop it in the comments, I'd love to explore it. The song Tantalized was from their Heyday album, which came out in 1985. What is it about the church being so unapologetically themselves that appealed to me? I think them being them at the age that I was. So when I can't, as I say, I can't remember when I first discovered them, but it was early to mid teenage years for me. And I think that's such a tumultuous, vulnerable metamorphosis. That's a made up word, but you know where I'm going with that. It's such a time of transition, and it's where you learn more about yourself in relation to other people. You've got this growing awareness of otherness and how you appear to others. And I know for me, and I think a lot of other people, there's this part of the journey where you are trying to work out who you're meant to be. I do remember someone telling me around that time to just be myself. And by then, I actually had no idea who that was. That was really even more confusing, although it was meant to be empowering. And honestly, it was probably the best advice ever. Be yourself always. Some people won't like it, that's fine, but they're not our people. And the people who do, they're going to love us more. So I think them being unapologetically themselves subtly gave me permission to start exploring to start exploring what else there was other than the mainstream that sort of was rammed down your throat with, Rage and MTV and magazines and everything that goes on in life growing up, where you're shown how you should look, you're told what you should be doing. This, you've been there, you've seen this yourselves, but I think it gave me the insight that you could do things really differently, and that was fine. And like I love the church's music, people who find me as me are going to love me for who I am as well. So, yeah, I think that was it. I love bass. I love energy of songs. Something that I find interesting about the bass lines of the church is that they're very rhythm section style. They're very, very basic. So if you compared the bass line of a church song compared to, say, the Interrupters or the Cure, two bands I've already shared with you, even the Celibate Rifles, you'll see how different they are, especially the Interrupters. Like, it's all over the place. It's, different rhythm and tempo, and it's exciting to listen to. The church's bass lines are really basic, and I always sort of tempted to do this when I think of church songs, because I'm sure I don't know whether Steve Kilby uses a pick or his fingers. I use my fingers, but it's just that rhythm. It's unchanging, it's constant, but it's very basic. That said, the fact that Steve Kilbey could sing and play bass at the same time was something that absolutely always has impressed me. And maybe to sing as well as he does and play bass, the bass playing complexity has to drop down a notch to allow him the, I guess, the mental capacity or whatever it is you need to sing in such an incredible way. It sort of frees that up to do the singing as well as he does. So, anyway, I know I've mentioned to you before that guitar is often noisy, and I listen to the bass, I listen to the vocals, not always the lyrics, but listening to the sound of the vocals with the bass and feeling the energy of the song. The church is definitely an exception in terms of guitar because there's like this jangly, um, it's like I used to wear lots of bracelets, and every time I moved, they'd be sort of tinkling and jangling around. They've got two guitarists, Marty Wilson Piper and Peter Coppers, and I find that the beautiful interaction of their guitar is probably synonymous to my little jangly bracelets. That there's just this lovely, I don't know, it's tinkly without being tinkly. There's something really lovely for me about the way the church guitar lines are laid down and played, and I don't know, it's actually a band whose guitar I really enjoy. I really love the lyrics of church songs. There are often references to mythology and revealed to me that the band were really well read. And something that I've liked is as I've gotten older, the more I've read, the more I've been exposed to in life, I'm sort of discovering these links later and just going, that's what that was. So that to me is a way that the songs stay alive with me throughout, you know, life as I grow and explore. Something about Tantalized in particular, I love the concept of being filled with wonder, seeing everything like it's for the first time. And a line for me that captures that is, all that glittered had me mesmerized. It's like twinkling magical sort of observations and, that capture attention and, yeah, just really immerse and engage you in a very special way. Now, that said, while I do love the church's lyrics, they don't always fully make sense to me. Sometimes they feel like a collection of images or fragments. There's this world, there's other worlds, and they kind of mingle together and jump around a little bit. So I feel like I get carried into places and just drawn wherever the attention of the songwriters put the lyrics. You know what I mean? It's like my attention goes where theirs gone and theirs has gone, and it's like traveling together. So, why was I so drawn to music that didn't give me all the answers? Well, I don't know that lyrics need to give you all the answers. Music needs to give you the answers. I think for me and the way my brain works, I actually really love sitting in places of the unknown where I've got more questions than answers. Maybe that's part of the appeal. Maybe that's why it's not unsettling that I can't quite understand the lyrics. Um, I think for me, that sort of, I guess, questing to understand is something that makes something more interesting for me. I think referring back to the movie The Bookshop, there's a line in it that I actually had to pause the movie and sit and think about it for a little bit, where one of the characters, I can't quite remember his name, it's the elderly fellow that's a hermit, but a big reader, Edmund Brundish, I think it is. He said that understanding weakens the mind. And I was like, what? How could it? And then I thought about it in the way that I love not knowing. It's the not knowing that means you're questing, and there's that activity to try to understand. And thinking about modern life, the way everyone sort of looks up everything straight away on their devices, I think that takes that element of wonder away. It takes away that the joy of the exploration, the mental exploration, uh, the opportunity to dream up multiple possibilities. Uh, yeah, so I think that might be part of what it is for me. I don't need answers to be given to me, but I do like the not knowing of the church as well. And I think the overall sound and the energy, the guitars, the imagery is enough to capture me anyway. I think the fragmentation of ideas and concepts and images creates a sense of wonder for me as they connect and disconnect. They segue and then they distance themselves somehow. I think there's a certain magic in that songwriting style. Um, yeah, it's interesting. I think too something that I love in music as well as movies and books is fantasy. I love fiction. I love other worlds because other worlds there's different views. There's different rules, there's different ways. And again, I think this is very attuned to what the church is all about, doing things your own way, going about things in a way that feels right for you. So I think, yeah, this is something that I love in the song Tantalized in particular. And I'll go into that more in just a moment. The church has, I guess, grown or changed, developed, whatever the right word is, over the decades. And as with many of their songs from this era, there's something incredibly atmospheric about this song. And with that, like I mentioned before, with the fragments of ideas and sort of being carried along with the story, I feel there's this transporting sort of aspect, like with the songs that I've already shared with you, A Forest, Ocean Shore, that sense of being drawn into this other world and becoming part of it, at least for the duration of the song. So, all of that said, let's watch the film clip. The film clip is not one I even remember seeing. I've got the album, got the CD, I've listened to it gazillion times, heard it on the radio, etc. But let's have a watch of the film clip here. All right? Wow, isn't that amazing? Gosh, wow. Apart from the song, I found the film clip really, really interesting because it there's a lot of it that's filmed in Sydney near Luna Park. I've recognised a lot of the scenery, and you can see as they're sort of driving around. I my immediate reaction is like, "Oh, where's that? I know where that is," and just making the connections because I grew up in Sydney. So that was actually a really fun part of the film clip for me. I think something else that was interesting is we're sort of going from Luna Park where it's Fun Park, and I think Fun Park, and they show the clowns with the mouths moving, um, and they're kind of a bit creepy. But Fun Parks, theme parks are a little bit um, different. Is probably the only word I'm going to come up with in the moment. And then there's a contrast to it looks like they've headed to King's Cross, which is like sort of more adult, X-rated area of Sydney. Then it looks like they're also travelling around the country. There's a scene where there's a big truck with cows on it and stuff like that. And also going to all sorts of different communities and places. There was a couple of things I noticed that made me smile. Oh, made me, well, one of the things that made me smile in this was the flamenco dances. I love flamenco dances, and it's something I tie in a lot with being very young because that was one of the first things I wanted to be was a flamenco dancer, not for the dancing, but for the music and for the amazing dresses and that you could spin and your skirt would just fly out. Um, so I would have been maybe 3 or 4 when I wanted to do that. So yeah, beautiful childhood memories there with that. Um, and there was this just a split second where I went, oh, okay. Earlier on in the video where there's someone with a camera and they just turn it directly to you and you go, whoa, did they just take a photo of me? Like, I think it makes you aware that you're watching something. And that's not often done in film clips as far as I'm aware, but who knows? I don't really look for those things. But it was just a moment that sort of almost startled me. Not in a bad way, but just made me go, oh, that's right, I'm watching someone else's stuff. So that was really interesting. Uh, the music, oh golly gosh. And I'm sure you could see by their clothing and hair, they weren't paisley so much there as floral, but and Marty Wilson Piper, I just remember had these massive hoop earrings. It is just so them, which I just love. I hope you did too. Obviously, not playing it all because of copyright reasons, but we just get a glimpse of it, and you can watch the full song. I'll put the link below. There's a sense too with this song that a little bit like a book where you sort of start in the action and then the rest of the book is the lead up to what happened. So by the end of the book, you're back at the beginning again. It sort of feels like that with this song. And I think the lyric, the first lyric, God, I've been asleep so long, I've been away. It feels like he's just been, I say he, I, I, I think everyone, I think, gets credited for the church songs. I'm saying he, Steve Kilby, the singer. I'm just going to pretend it's him for the sake of simplicity. Or maybe I don't, but anyway. Um, so God, I've been asleep so long, I've been away, just feels like he's been missing, even if it's just mentally or emotionally absent. It's, I guess, almost like a sense of being separated out of your reality and suddenly snapping back in and going, whoa, hang on, I've just missed a whole lot of stuff. So that's an interesting concept because immediately it's like, why? Why haven't you been here? Why has there been that disconnect? What led to that? And the rest of the song, I think, explains. So, lyrics like, can't wait to see your eyes now you've been tantalized. It really suggests altered states, temptation, excess, and I think that's reinforced by a later line. 101 voluptuous days. The labyrinth was close, so we banged on the door. I let the wanton flesh obsess me, let the dreams and drugs assess me. It's like just not being fully yourself, being swept up, caught up in this other way that is maybe foisted upon you or dragged into, you've been dragged into, sucked into, maybe like I was going to say a whirlwind, but it's not that, in water, where they're the vortex and it just sucks you down into it. Um, and while I think there's definitely the element of altered states, because I think from what I've read about this song, it's a lot about the sudden fame and everything that came with that. And it makes sense. It's like they got swept up in it big time. And yeah, just coming to terms with what's happening. But for me, my experience of this song, it's much more about being drawn into a mysterious other world. And without watching the film clip and being taken all over Sydney and other places, I imagine this exotic marketplace where there are amazing items around. There's colours and sounds and smells and activity, and it's just got this beautiful mystical quality to it. Almost, I'm trying to think of something I can help you understand the image in my mind. It's maybe a little bit like an ancient Middle Eastern market. So I don't know if you watched I Dream of Jeannie, but where she goes back to where she came from and it's this marketplace. It's that kind of thing. We see something similar in Jumanji, that Alibaba. There's lots and lots of different things where we see those exotic marketplaces, and that's more the feel that comes to me through this song. And certainly the richness of everything and all the things that are competing for your attention, like the colors and sounds and smells and activity. It's like it would be a little overwhelming in a beautiful way because it's exciting to explore something lovely like that. There's a line in the song that I've seen written in two different ways, and I'll explain. And that is, I was high and fired, yet never inspired. But I hear that and I have seen that as I was hired and fired, yet never inspired, which makes more sense in terms of the poetry of the song as well. And for me, I always heard that and thought about it in context of doing meaningful work. Now, we work a huge amount of time. A third of our lives pretty much is at work. And I took this as work shouldn't be drudgery. Work should be something that's important, that's meaningful, where you're contributing something positive. It should light you up and it should be inspiring enough to want to go there. And again, I think this was one of those little permission pieces that sat with me from teenage years. I mean, to now, like, I want to do something that's important and meaningful, which is why I do what I do. And I think there's an element of going with the flow. I found the burning streets around me, let the buzzing swarm confound me. To me, that's not any form of resistance. It's just like noticing all this stuff and just being carried around in it, which I think is good, and it can also be detrimental if we're not having any say in what we're doing. We're just following what everybody else is doing. But I really enjoyed the idea of just letting go. Um, there's this, I'm going to share a story. It's a little bit embarrassing. I think maybe it's embarrassing, maybe it's not, maybe it's just revealing. But a long time ago, I had friends who had a band called The Drugs, and they always had costumes and there were themes, and it was all just, you never knew what you were going to get when you turned up, but you knew it was going to be fun. And one night I turned up to see them, and they had this thing where you had to wear a name badge that, you wrote your name on when you came in and wore it. But you weren't allowed to put your name on it. You had to put some other name. And their guitarist was saying, "Come on, like, what do you want to put on?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I think I had no chance to be mentally prepared for that, so I had no idea, and I couldn't think of anything." And he kept asking me to come up with something, and I just kept saying, "I'm not thinking." So he wrote "not thinking," and I wore that the whole night, and it was probably a hugely fun night because I had permission not to think. And I didn't think, I mean, I sort of did, but I also didn't. I thought a lot less than I normally do. So it was actually really liberating. And I think this is where that going with the flow, sometimes just letting go of observing, analyzing, interpreting, processing all the data and information that my incredibly busy mind is taking in, and just being in the moment. It was like my version of a mindful kind of experience. It was great fun. Now, on reflection about this song, because it does feel so otherworldly, there's so many other elements. I mean, there's the altered states that I think is more what the band experienced. For me, it was the other worlds. And I think the simplicity of the bass actually really works well because of that. I think the simplicity of the bass gives us somewhere safe to explore from, somewhere steady and secure to return to. And it's like the constant, even though you're going all over the place. And there's times where the music really builds and you can just feel that sense of being in this sort of whirl of experience. And yet the bass is there underneath, just keeping you steady like an anchor, keeping you in reality, even if it's just a little bit. So I think it was probably inadvertent. I don't think it's planned or intended to do that. I think it's actually purely the fact that singing and playing bass, being the lead singer and singing well and playing the bass takes up too much mental capacity to do both extremely well. So the bass is done well enough. It's certainly fantastic. And it allows the singing to be the big focus of Steve Kilby's attention. Why do some songs feel like somewhere that you can go? I think it's the atmosphere. I think it's the rhythm and the atmosphere and the storytelling aspect. They, yeah, I don't know what else to say on that one. It's because I do feel like I explored this with Ocean Shore and a forest, and here in Tantalized too. I think it's otherworldly enough that it becomes fictive, that my mind and body just goes, I'm all in. I want to experience this other world and see what it's all about. I think that might be my answer. There's another lyric too that I guess really confirms my understanding of this song being about the whirlwind of being swept up in fame and all that comes with it. And that is flattering, chattering words to impress me. And it really sounds like they're surrounded by yes people, that it's so surreal, and there's just, yeah, this constant desire to please and I guess cower and um, be submissive. I'm not sure if that's quite the right word, but um, yeah, it's not being, the other people aren't being true to themselves. They're being yes people. They're trying to please the band. And I can't imagine ever being comfortable in a space like that. It just would be, I'd actually feel really unsafe in a space like that because I like direct, I like honest, I like people telling the truth and having their own opinion, and I'm fine if it's different to mine. And I would feel really uncomfortable because I wouldn't know what was safe, what you could trust, what I could trust, who I could trust. It would make me really uncomfortable. And on that note, I think there is the opposite end, which is where Robert Smith from The Cure exists. Robert Smith said that he feels he's surrounded by people that thinks what he does is rubbish. So between everybody thinking what you do is rubbish and everybody just being people pleasing, yes, people, and lying, I'd like somewhere in between for me. But I think, yeah, it's one extreme. That's one extreme, and the other extreme. Yeah, just an interesting concept. Now, being tantalized is about being tempted. It's There's curiosity, there's leaning into and never quite reaching, and I actually think with the ambiguity of this song, the song itself is tantalizing. I've linked the full song below so you can listen to it properly, and I ask you to please do that. It is amazing. And I shared earlier that this song creates a world that you can step into. And I'm curious, are there songs that have transported you somewhere that you can't quite explain? I'd love to hear, so let me know in the comments. Thank you for joining me on The Outsider Within. Next time, I'll be sharing a song about seeing the extraordinary loveliness hidden inside the everyday. May you continue to own what supports you even when it looks different.